Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Killin' Me Smallz podcast. I am your host, Mike Small. You can follow me on Twitter at Real Mike Small, and I'll probably follow you back if it looks like you might be interesting. Joining me today on the podcast is a guy that I've known, God, is it over 30 years? Jim Szoke, who is the longtime voice of the Carolina Panthers, working with their broadcast for 27 years, I believe. And he is the sports director at WBT Radio. We worked together back when I was going through my formative radio and television years in the early 90s. And I learned a lot from him. He's one of the funniest guys on the radio, a real talent. And I thought I had this whole vision, Jim. I'm not going to lie to you. Of course, I want to talk to you anyway because I like you. But I had this vision that I was going to be, as kind of a Sixers-ish podcast here. I had this vision that, the Hornets were going to sail through the play-in games. Bradley Beal's banged up. Karis LeVert's not playing for Indiana. And the Hornets would be the Sixers' first-round opponent. And I had this vision that this was going to be awesome. And the Hornets kind of pooped the bed last night. But anyway, welcome to the podcast. How's that for an opening?
Yeah, not inaccurate for one thing. You and Charles Barkley had the same vision. He hit the guarantee button last night, and the rest is history. They're down 24-9 about 5 minutes into the
game. It was over. It was over 5 minutes into the game.
Oh, Dougie McBuckets of all people, just to put them away early, and they were down 16 after one. And it's weird because you talk about playoff intensity. And granted, it's the play-in, not the playoffs, but there wasn't exactly a defensive intensity to giving up 144 points. They struggled down the stretch. They lost their last 6 games. And granted, they didn't have Gordon Hayward, but the Pacers were down much more without having LeVert because of COVID. And the other players they've been without anyway, like Miles Turner. So you would think, the Hornets are actually in better shape than they were. But it's a young team. I think they do have a bright future. They'll get Gordon Hayward back next year, but they got to fix the middle. You've got Joel Embiid, and we have everything but that in the middle. We just bleed in the middle. Points, rebounds, no rim.
Cody Zeller's not working for you?
No, in fact, that might have been his last game. Actually, he's only played his entire career here, but I think the writing's on the wall that that's probably not going to continue.
Yeah, the Hornets are interesting to me because I really, obviously LaMelo Ball comes in and provides so much excitement. Then he got injured, but when he came back, I thought, okay, here we go. This could be something interesting, but it just never clicked down the stretch.
No, they're a fun team to watch too. But before Gordon Hayward's injury, with about 20 whatever games to go, they had LaMelo. Every night you see Miles Bridges on Sports Center. He's the dunk highlight guy. PJ Washington played better this year, so they definitely improved. And Terry Rozier played his best basketball this year. That was the
turned out to be a great move.
People forget that was a trade. That wasn't just Kemba going to Boston. That was a trade that worked out.
Sign and trade. Yep.
Terry had some great moments this year. Was probably worthy of an All-Star appearance, but they don't play great defense overall. They kind of play in stretches of it, but they don't stay with it. Again, the interior is a problem, and for whatever reason, a team that shot the ball well all year, they just did not shoot the ball during that last stretch of the season at all, including the playoff game. Like last night, at some point, they're like 4 out of 23 on 3-pointers, and there's just no excuse for that. You can be not playing defense, you can be down a few guys, but for these guys collectively to just not, hit the rim. It was poor performance against an Indiana team that obviously is not great. That's why they're in the play-in game. And as you said, if we somehow won 2 road games, our reward would have been to get blown out by the Philadelphia 76ers. So, oh well.
Well, what's the attitude about Hornet basketball down there? My perception is, Jordan came in there and everything that he touched turned terrible. And you struck gold with LaMelo. So it seems like the future could be a little bit more bright. Is that accurate? Is the fan base juiced up?
They were. I tell you, that team was humming along there for a while before all the different injuries hit. I forget, Devontae Graham's another solid player for them. So they got good guards. But they, I think the fan base was excited. It's too bad a lot of this happened with no fans, and then for a while it was 25% capacity. Because I think it really would have been a real energy to this young team. And I'll be honest, you brought up LaMelo Ball and Michael Jordan's history with draft picks and all that, and Mitch Kupchak I think has done a really good job as GM. That's going back to Michael being with the Bobcats first and drafting Adam Morrison. That was his handle over those kind of picks. And then, with bringing Mitch in here, I think things have really been solid the last couple of drafts and free agency wise. And I'll say I thought LaMelo, I didn't think would be a great NBA player. I think he was truly the rookie of the year. I didn't think he'd shoot it well. He didn't have any reputation as a defender. I still don't think he plays defense much, but he shot the ball so much better than I thought. And I thought Gordon Hayward was a lot of money for a guy who's had a lot of injuries. And turned out he did have an injury. It's always a different injury. It's always something different with him. So hopefully it doesn't just continue in that trend. But it felt a little Kevin Lovish to me getting Gordon Hayward. But he was actually a really good player for them when he was healthy and that veteran presence that they needed. So I think Mitch and Michael, obviously they consult on all these big moves. I think they got it going in the right direction.
It was an odd move, in my opinion, when they went and got Hayward, because he looked washed last year in Boston. Now, I'm not saying that he's not a good player and doesn't have something left in him, but you can't give a guy that much money and count on him to be healthy for you, I wouldn't think, in this NBA.
And you've got to also factor in, what are you? This is a largely young team. Terry Rozier, younger veteran guy. Do you really need a 30-year-old guy to be the 8th seed? If everything worked out, they would probably have been 7, 8 seed this year. So do you want to go all in and spend cap money and have this kind of mishmash of young talent that's emerging, and then you got the veteran guy? I think that move is made more for a team that's a top 4 seed. It makes more sense for a team that needs a piece that could be a championship component, and you're willing to roll the dice a little bit on his health with a guy like that. But I agree with you as far as overall concept. I didn't think it was a great move, but it was working for a while when everybody was healthy.
It's interesting, though. I mean, you think about LaMelo Ball, and you brought it up that, you didn't, what you thought he might be and not be. My son, who's 22 years old, has been watching LaMelo Ball videos for like 5 years on YouTube since he was a sophomore in high school, and has been all over LaMelo Ball. But, and that's really the culture, right? I mean, he's shooting half court shots, up by 40 in games. And that's, what Steph Curry, I guess, has brought, et cetera. And I didn't think he was going to be a great shooter either. I don't think he has any interest in defense, but it looks like he's brought some energy to the franchise, though. I mean, I don't know if that energy will translate into playoff success or even playoff appearances, but I've got to think that they feel like they hit on one for sure.
They did, because it felt to me like they were going after. I mean, you could argue that everyone had pretty much had him in the top 3, so I guess they didn't reach for him. But it felt a little like this was like a marketing thing that, to me, a pass that works is a pass that works. It doesn't have to be exciting. It doesn't have to be a glitzy pass. And that's kind of like what the highlight package on him was mostly that kind of thing. But I tell you what, I mean, he really is an exceptional passer. That was needed on a team that had some shooters and freed them up. And he can run the court and he can do all that stuff. And you're right about the defense. But better than an advertised shooter for being his rookie year in particular. Still has a goofy looking shot, but it works for him. And to their credit, they're not messing with his form and they're leaving it be. It brings an energy when you've got a kid that can pass the ball the way he does it slick. But the important thing is, like you said, kind of translated to winning basketball, winning playoff games. And that's where they have to kind of all grow together and not panic and start jacking up threes and playing a lot of hero ball in the second half of that game. I mean, you've got to kind of settle down and kind of chunk at it, a little bit at a time. And you got to buckle up and play defense. And that's where he's not going to help you. That's not his game. He's just not going to be a great defender, despite really good size for a point guard. Obviously, it's a shame he's not more of a defender.
Well, I remember being on the radio with you in 1991, and we were arguing. I remember this vividly. The Hornets had the number 1 pick, and you said they should take Larry Johnson, and I said they should take Kenny Anderson. So what do I know? I think the Larry Johnson thing kind of worked out for the most part.
Hey, what's up, guys? MLB baseball is in full swing. The NBA and NHL playoffs are right around the corner, and the NFL season is mere moments away. While we here at the Painted Lines are devoted to bringing you top-notch content from all the major sports, we are excited to also now give you the opportunity to cash in on all that content and knowledge. If you follow the link below, you will have the opportunity to sign up with BetRivers, an online sportsbook, and get an instant new user deposit match of up to $250. That's free money that you can use and try to turn into more free money. Let's go. Don't sit there and waste all that money. turn every basket into an otherwise meaningless Cavs-Timberwolves matchup on a random Wednesday in March. That makes it all the more exciting. For betting tips and advice, be sure to check out written content from our top prognosticator, Money Max, on our website at thepaintedlines.com, or check out the Tough Cover podcast right here on the Painted Lines YouTube channel. You've seen the commercials all over TV and radio, but now is the time. Sign up today with BetRivers using the link below and start cashing in on your love for sports. Using the link below will automatically inform BetRivers that TPL sent you, and you'll get that new user deposit match of up to $250. Don't miss out on this opportunity for some free money, baby.
Hard to know too. Larry with the injuries. That was the thing with him too.
Yeah.
He had a great couple-year run, and then with the Knicks, the back and all that got into the way. But Larry, LJ, Alonzo, those were to me, those were like the glory days of that team. The team that they had was those early '90s teams, and once those guys were in there in the early to mid '90s, that was fun basketball.
They were fun to watch.
Part of that. Kendall Gill, kind of underrated player, I thought.
Yeah.
Group too.
Del Curry.
Yeah, Del Curry is one of the all-timers for us. Great sixth man and great father of basketball players, but still a color commentator with the Hornets TV side.
Yeah, definitely a great father of basketball players. What I was doing in the backyard with my son wasn't quite as good as what he was doing with his.
No, I didn't create any even college scholarships. Not a thing. Oh, so there you go.
There you go. With regards to Jordan, you brought him up earlier. Is he a presence in Charlotte? I mean, is he somebody that people see in the community? Does he show up to a lot of things, or is he pretty much behind the scenes?
No, he is not. He is, he splits his time. He's in Florida a lot. He's done a better job about just showing up at games, because there was a lot of years where you wouldn't see him at courtside at games. So he's more of a presence, at least in that part of it, at being at the games. But the organization, as far as community minded, they do a lot of charitable things throughout the year. But in particular, he doesn't speak a lot, doesn't do a lot of interviews. You don't see him out and about in Charlotte. So no. And I thought too that he would be, and I'm talking in general now during his whole tenure here, more of a recruiter of big name guys, because you're thinking Charlotte's not one of those destination markets for free agents, but Michael Jordan should be. And, who wouldn't want to play for Michael Jordan? So it's been a little surprising to me that there's not been more traction in that area and not more success. We see a lot of times where great players are not, necessarily great GMs or owners and have success in that way. But this is one of the great competitors, not only great players, but one of the great competitors in the history of the game. And you think if the fans are tired of losing, we went 33-40, as it turned out this year, that he would certainly be bothered by that, even if he is making money or not. You think he'd be bothered by the records?
I'm going to make you feel old for a second. So you and I watched Jordan play, and we would love to play for Michael Jordan if he recruited us. 23-year-olds today have the only thing they know about him is they see him on a commercial, maybe a YouTube video, right? It doesn't have the same cachet.
Yeah, the 10-part documentary probably brought some more cachet.
Well, you're right. You know what? You're right about that. That was actually pretty cool, I have to admit.
Yeah, but I think guys that play basketball that not necessarily the 23-year-olds, but maybe the veteran guys or whatever, and maybe ACC guys just would know the legacy and want to be a part of that as well. But hasn't worked out that way, and they've been really a middling team. I mean, that occasionally makes the playoffs, never winning a series. They had a little bit of a run with Kemba Walker a couple years ago, and then 2 years ago, obviously made the deal with Kemba going to Boston, and they got Terry Rozier out of that. But they decided they didn't want to pay Kemba either, and I thought that was a wrong move. And not that Kemba was a game changer here, but at least it gives you a building block. I thought with Kemba, you had a guy that really wanted to be here. He'd been here for 8 years. He was an all-star. When he was here, one of the best shooters from the outside in the league, very consistent, had been very healthy while he was here too. So I thought they should have just gone ahead and paid Kemba, and they ended up paying Gordon Hayward. As you mentioned, why not keep Kemba and not have to go make the Gordon Hayward deal? So you're kind of, I don't know, switching the chairs around on the on the deck a little bit when you make those kind of veteran moves. Well,
you got Terry Rozier out of the Kemba deal, which works out pretty well. Mm-hmm. And I thought, obviously they did a great job. They must have known Kemba's back history better than anybody, right? So that worked out. But then, you take on Gordon Hayward, that ruins the whole thing. So what are you going to do? Hey, Jim, we're going to take a quick break here. And when we come back, I want to talk to you more about the NBA and some of your perceptions of this Philadelphia team, because it's always fun to hear from outside of the Philadelphia market what people think about the team. But real quick, as many people who listen to the podcast are aware, my daughter Jordan has a brain tumor and has gone through chemotherapy and is doing great. Every 6 months we have to get an MRI and make sure it hasn't grown, and knock on wood, it has not. But instead of sitting back and feeling sorry for herself, she's gone and started a charity to help others. And that charity, called Small Miracles, has raised over $45,000, and it continues to raise money. We have got a casino night coming up. We're selling all kinds of gear. If you want to get involved with the charity, please go on to the website. It's smallmiracle.org. Or if you just want to Venmo a donation, the money goes directly to the kids. Most recently, we've been buying a bunch of iPads for kids at Children's Hospital that are undergoing chemotherapy so that they have something to do while they're going through treatment, et cetera. And that Venmo address is at small_miracles. So, Jim, thanks for the indulgence. And getting back to basketball, the Sixers thing is been really fun for us. I mean, I feel like my Sixers fandom has been mired in mediocrity for most of my adult life. And I've always wanted, and I'm always the guy that's, okay, look, they suck. I just want them to lose the rest of the game. So maybe they get a lottery pick and there's a Tim Duncan out there for them. And it never happens. So finally they hire Sam Hinkie, and he says, you know what, let's tear this whole thing down and let's do it right. And it's controversial, this whole process. And people in the national media, like the Rick Buchers of the world and, the Bomani Jones of the world, ridicule. It's terrible. Stephen A. Smith, it's awful. But you know what? I thought it was kind of awesome. And you end up after a couple of years with Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid, and you're not guaranteed a championship, but you're guaranteed shots on goal. And if you have a lot of shots on goal for a championship, you may hit one. And you know what? Every game is relevant. Every game is important, and every game is fun. So that's my perception. What is the perception that you have, and maybe some of the Charlotte folks?
I think it's a nice blueprint, and it's funny. Just a real quick aside is that Matt Rule, the Panthers coach, he uses that word process a lot, and so he was asked about the process.
He ripped it, didn't he?
He ripped it. His comment was, "Last I checked, they weren't hanging any banners or whatever in Philadelphia."
Yeah, that got back to Philadelphia, by the way.
Yeah, I'm sure it did.
The former Temple coach. People know about that.
So it may that was his basis of bringing that up as an example. So good luck to you guys. And also, I'll say, as we're talking Sixers here, as a kid, you know how it used to be back in the day. It was like, I guess CBS would show the Sunday games in the NBA. It was always Boston. It was always the Lakers. It was the same teams. I just hung on to Philadelphia. I used to love Andrew Toney. Was my favorite player when I was a kid growing up. I thought Andrew Toney was a deal.
A Boston Strangler.
Oh my God! So the Julius Erving and George McGinnis, and then Andrew Toney and those teams. I used to love those Sixers teams. Always rooted against Boston and New York with those Philly teams, watching from afar. But I will say, what they've done obviously has been terrific to me. Embiid should be the MVP, and Steph has been terrific this year. But you're in a play-in situation there versus the number one seed in the East, and I just think big men so often get overlooked in this era of basketball. I feel like that it's been the classic. It's more exciting to watch, the 40-foot shots, like you mentioned, 3-point shooting. And Steph is, just the best shooter probably in the history of the game, even better than Andrew Toney. But Joel Embiid has just been fantastic on a winning team. And to me, he would get an MVP vote from me if I had one. But him and Simmons, and they bring defense. They do it on both sides of the floor. It's everything about Embiid, especially. They bring it every night on the other end of the floor too, not just be an offensive player. And Curry is not that guy. And then, the addition of Doc Rivers. I mean, just all that has come together. I just think it's really got a I think Milwaukee could go out in the first round against Miami. I think good offense against a good defensive.
Do you think so?
I think they could. I think Miami.
I mean, if you put a gun to my head and ask me the team that I'm most concerned about in terms of getting to the finals, it's Milwaukee.
Yeah, because they can score. Sixers. Yeah, because they can score all day long. So, absolutely, they can do that. But I think they may not make it out of their first playoff round.
It's a tough draw.
Miami's built because of their defense. Miami's playing well now. They're healthy now. Jimmy Butler. So I think, Miami could definitely spoil it for Milwaukee right out of there. I don't think Milwaukee's been anything extra special this year. And Brooklyn, to me, it's just all kind of coming together, right? We'll see what that looks like in the playoffs. I mean, obviously they've got a lot of playoff pedigree on that roster, so that's not an issue. But we'll see. I think the East is going to be really exciting to watch how that plays out.
I've got to think there's going to be a lot of 150 to 140 type games for the Nets. They just don't guard anybody, but man, can they score.
That's the thing. Can you outscore? Can you stay on your shot every night? And that's, to me, that's not what playoff basketball used to be. It used to be buckled down and the scores would get lower. And that you'd see the classic Detroit, Pistons teams and stuff like that would just bully you and make it difficult. And there's not a lot of teams that are built to play that kind of defense anymore. So to me, Philadelphia, probably the best well-rounded team that can score points, but also give you a defensive issue as well. So I really like Philadelphia beyond their seeding. I just really like how they're built to be a playoff team.
So tonight, people will know the results of this game by the time this podcast comes out, but you've got the play-in game with the Lakers and the Warriors. How do you see the West? Do you think the Lakers can go all through and get there? Do you think the Clippers have enough gumption this year to do it?
Yeah. Can we do alternate endings since we don't know how the game will go tonight? We'll do one version where the Lakers.
Oh no, we're gonna look brilliant or stupid. That's the way it's got to work, man. There's no editing here.
Wait, the game doesn't start till 10, so a 12:30 edit tonight maybe.
I'm gonna call you during your morning shift tomorrow, right before you go in about 4 a.m. Hey, we got to recut it. The Lakers lost.
We're gonna look so stupid on the podcast if we don't. So
wouldn't be the first time here, so don't worry about it.
No, that's what the podcast is for, is to look stupid. But I grew up in Cleveland, so I was a Cavaliers fan, and LeBron James. I mean, they would try to fight for that number one seed, and then he realized after a while, it's like, for the fourth or fifth seed, we could still get to the finals. And he did. He would still play Golden State in the finals every year because they would have not as good of talent around him as what he's got with Anthony Davis, obviously in LA. I think the Lakers, now they have AD and LeBron back. I mean, now they're the team that they're supposed to be. So I think they can at least reach the Western Conference Finals. Clippers are loaded. Clippers are really good. I mean, they've got all the pieces and no excuses, not to be the kind of team that can reach all the way to the NBA Finals. And to me, there's that they've been good. They've got Kawhi, they got PG, they got all these great players. But the Lakers still have LeBron. They still have Anthony Davis. And those guys at this moment are healthy. Knock on wood for them, right? So I think they can get there just on the strength of those two guys and nothing else if they needed to. And they picked up Drummond, who can get him some rebounds. And I don't really like his game, another Cleveland player, but I think he gives them at least a presence in the middle where he can, not play defense so much, but at least, grab some rebounds, suck up some minutes, and take the pressure off of Anthony Davis a little bit. But that Clippers team, I mean, they're really built for it. And of course, Utah is the team this year. I mean, it's been fantastic. And every time I think of Utah, I think of the Hornets passing on him, as so did the number of teams of Donovan Mitchell dropping down to, where did he go, 11, 13? Was it 13 maybe he went at?
I think they traded up to him to 13 to get him, right?
Yeah, I mean, that would have been a franchise changer if the Hornets had just, gone ahead and made that pick. But they took Malik Monk, who's gotten better. It's taken, 4 years or whatever, but he's gotten better. But he's still a bench player on this team compared to an all-star, though, and in Donovan Mitchell. And that was the pick that many forecasted they would make. But,
well, you could have traded up and gotten Markelle Fultz like the Sixers did. That didn't work out.
No, that wasn't a good idea either. So hindsight being
you're watching Jason Tatum put up 50 last night, who went third in that draft.
There were some pretty good players, as it turned out.
They worked out okay. Might have gotten fleeced on that one.
Yeah, they didn't go in the right order, but there were some pretty good players in that draft.
Yeah, I think Lonzo's really good. He's now he shoots about 40% from three, and he's a good playmaker. I just think he hasn't landed in the right spot.
No, but he'll keep getting landing spots, and eventually he'll get it right.
So as a genuine Ohio sports fan, a guy who grew up in the Ohio area, not Ohio area, you're in Ohio. So LeBron, is he a mercenary? Do you love him because he got you a championship? Do you hate him because he left twice? Where are you with LeBron?
To me, yeah, he won the only championship of my lifetime, counting all the big sports up there. So to me, it's like, I'll take that. And he got him to the finals so many other times, and they didn't give him the supporting cast to do better. There are things about LeBron that rub people the wrong way. He talks about a lot of other things, and you either accept that or you don't. But the fact that he left, I don't begrudge the fact that he left. I mean, this is a guy who's a dynamic all-time star, and he put in, I want to say, a total of, I think, 11 years in Cleveland. So between 4 years in Miami, and now was he second year in LA. So I think he came back, he put in his time, and he came back a second time, brought a championship. I think mission accomplished. I think he just ran into that buzzsaw that was the Golden State Warriors at the same time, where they might have won multiple championships. Honestly, anybody but Golden State, they probably had a chance to win a lot of titles during that time. And to go back even further, I think back to prior to his era, the Cleveland teams that had Brad Daugherty, who you remember, of course, and those great teams with Mark Price.
Well, as a Sixers fan, we have a very vivid memory
Yes.
of Brad Daugherty because he was the number one pick. And the Sixers, for some reason, decided to trade Moses Malone for Jeff Rulin and the rights to Brad Daugherty to Cleveland for Roy Hinson, a day that will live in infamy for me.
Wow, that is a tough one. I forgot.
That's a bad day. That's a bad day.
I remember. That's a horrible trade.
So that was a bad day. The second bad day for Sixers fans, I was working at WBT with you when I remember coming in and you telling me the Sixers just traded Charles Barkley to Phoenix. And I'm thinking, oh, great. We must have gotten KJ or what? So the next thing I know, I'm looking at, Andrew Lang, Tim Perry. They did get Jeff Hornacek, but that's who you got for Charles Barkley. So they've made some pretty rough moves over the years.
Yeah, and every franchise has their history, but those are some humdingers right there. Those are
That's
really
some good ones.
Almost tough to top. But those Cleveland teams of Price and Daugherty and Larry Nance and those guys, they ran into the buzzsaw that was, the Michael Jordan Chicago era too. So, Cleveland also had some bad timing that their best teams for years in a row went up against those Chicago teams and those Golden State dynasties at the same time coming up.
And I won't bring up the Browns and the Drive and John Elway or any of that stuff, just because I think because you're a good guy, you gave me this time. I don't want to rub salt in the wounds.
No, don't think it's not at the top of my brain. So Denver at the exact same time with that. The Indians have been to a number of World Series and lose two of them in Game 7 extra innings. How about that? To the Marlins and to the Cubs back in 2016. So
you know what? The more I think about it, this podcast is really going to make Philly sports fans feel good. Had a couple of World Series, had a Super Bowl.
There's always that, hey, at least we're not them. Like in Cleveland, they say, at least we're not Detroit. So it's like everybody's got a comparison that makes them feel a little bit better.
This is a feel-good podcast. This is great.
That's right. It's been very therapeutic.
Absolutely. Well, for me, not for you as much. I'm assuming, but
that's okay. That's all right.
But hopefully I really hope to have you back during Panther season. I like what Matt Rule's doing down there, and it'll be really interesting to see what goes on with your new quarterback.
Yeah, and you guys are interesting too.
Sammy D.
Short removal from the Eagles from being in the Super Bowl to just the new coach and everything changing it in Philadelphia. So yeah, the Eagles are an interesting team.
Always interesting. Jim, thanks so much for joining us. Tell everybody how they can follow you on Twitter or where they can.
Well, you got to be able to spell my
listen to
name.
your work.
I guess it's there on the screen. Yeah, at Jim Szoke is on Twitter. I'm not on anything else. I'm not on Instagram or Facebook, so it's only on Twitter. At Jim Szoke, and you can spell Jim Szoke as you see it on the screen there. But other than that, that's it. You can tune in, listen to us on the radio during Panther season, and hopefully we'll win more than 5 games as we have the last 2 years.
Well, we're going to have you back during football season. Jim, thanks so much for joining us.
You got it. Thanks, Mike.
All right, we'll be back next week with Molly Sullivan, former 76ers sideline reporter, who will be on next week from the Killin' Me Smallz podcast. Thanks for joining, everybody, and thanks to Jim Szoke.